We all know that the art Tefilos, our Pialucha, has to be said quiet. Shemoneh Esrei, Balachash. Certain Tefilos we say loud, certain Tefilos we have to say quiet. Which Tefilos and what's the reason for saying it quiet? It all begins from a pusik in Sefer Shmuel. The Gemara says in Masechtas Bruchos, the sigya of how to daven, and Bruchos of Lamed Aleph. The pusik says, "B'chana, b'tfilas Chana," when Chana was davening, "V'koilo lo yishmu." Her voice wasn't heard. So the Gemara says, "Makam from here we see she'usa lahagbia koiloi b'tfilusoi." It's usa to raise your voice when you daven. Not only that, Chazal say, "Hamashmiya koiloi b'tfilusoi," a person who raises his voice, he has shvachem minna. So the Finna adds that's only if he could be machaven his tefillah balachash, davening quiet, but if he cannot have proper kavuna, then it's mitzvah to raise his voice. That's only if he davens b'yechidus, but davens b'tzibah, he'll disturb other people. Rashi says, why is it miktana yamuna? Kili aina kadosh baruch hu shoymaya tefillah lachash and megbia harba. It's kili Hashem cannot hear my tefillas when I'm quiet, so I have to raise my voice. So in the Torah, Simikif Aleph, Siv Bay, the Torah says, Umirev hamnina, kam mehuchas gewirte ikel mishme b'chana. We can learn from Chana several haluchas when it comes to tefillah. Chana medeberes al liba. Raks v'seyu noise, her lips were moving. Mekam lehispal shetzurech sheyachter b'svusof. The number one we learn from Chana, lips have to be moving. If lips are not moving, it's killing, he's not davening. Our discussion is if he should hear it or not, but not. The lips have to be moving. From the words of Chana, it says by Chana, you didn't hear her call, her voice. From here we see that your voice shouldn't be heard. And afterwards, the Torah brings, what's the pshat that you shouldn't hear the call? Others say, quietly, even your own ears shouldn't hear it. That's how quiet you should daven. And they bring a raya from a Tesefta. Tesefta says, maybe we should say that your ears should hear your tefillas. Her voice wasn't heard. Not even to herself. She couldn't hear her own tefillas. So therefore the Tesefta says that you should daven so quiet that even your own ears shouldn't hear it. Mi begemura dadon, Bavli, and Yerushalmi, and the Rambam, the Torah quotes all three. Yerushalmi says, Yuchel yahay magbia koile betfilusoi kva perish b'chana v'koile lo yishmo. Sheyoyse toiv lahashmiya lo oznov ki yoz yuchel lachavim yoyse. Yes, you could hear it, but other people shouldn't hear it. Lo oznov yuchel lahashmiya. V'chain kusev Rambam, lo yispal b'liba, don't daven in your heart. You should say the words bisfusov imashmiya lo oznov balachash. Lo yashmiya koiloi. Lo yashmiya koiloi means that you could hear it. Other people shouldn't hear it. So we see this concept of davening tefillah balachash. And the Beis Yosef quotes Azoyra Kudish, the Bedek Habayis, Makom mokam Azoyra maskim ledivraya tesefta. V'dui luchashloi. Yosef concludes with the Zohar Kudish that you should daven so quiet that even you shouldn't hear it. This very same malucha is also brought down in Simikif Mem Aleph. In the Haluchas of Kriyas HaTorah, a person has an aliyah, and he's saying the words of the Torah with the Baal Koira, the same machlokes, should you hear it or not. In Shulchan Aruch, Simekif Aleph, in Hilchos Tefilos it says, Lo yispal beliboy levad, the words of the Rambam, B'chat chadvurim b'sfusat im mashmiya lo ozno balachash v'lo yishma koiloi. Now we still don't know. Well, this is clear that the Mechaber says im mashmiya lo ozno balachash, almost like the Rambam, that you should hear it, not like the Zohar Kodesh. So the Mishnah says, Yesh kosvi at lechetchila lo yishmiya lo oznov. Mugavrom writes, Shai Rayim is Zohar. Coin call, it's not a Rai from the Zohar. If it's not a Rai from the Zohar, then even al Pikabula, there's no point of davening quietly that you shouldn't hear it. Also, the Gru writes, even the Zohar Paskins holds like the Shulchan Aruch, that you could hear it. So we see, it's accepted that the tefillah should be in a way where your ears should hear it, someone else shouldn't hear it. And the same thing it says, same discussion, we have the Simekif Malach from Hilchos Kriyas HaTorah, where the Mechaber says, Surich liklois b'nachash shelo yashmiya la'oznov. The Rambam brings, Afalam mashmiya la'oznov lekel ha'maichash, it's not any different than Kriyas HaTorah, than tefillah in Simekif Aleph. This is the discussion, the halucha, about davening quiet enough that other people shouldn't hear it, or is it enough that but you should hear it. It says from Reb Chaim Vital, the Tefilos Shemoneh Esrei does not go to Shamayim, only those Tefilos that are not heard. So Kriya Shema, the Mesakim, you have to hear it. You have to hear the Kriya Shema. But the Tefilos Shemoneh Esrei, like the Zohar, it shouldn't be heard, even you shouldn't hear it. As hiruchnius me'oid megeda teveriach hudam, then it's very ruchnius. The Reb Chaim Vital says, Yoisa me'oid min hasitra achav ayin royim oisa. So it's a very beginning, according to the Reb Chaim Vital, to daven very quiet. The Shloah Kodesh brings the Zohar and he writes, Mido Oma lemishma kulai mashma he atzmoi leyishma koila. He himself shouldn't hear the voice of the tefillah that he davens. The Benai Soscha says, the Kpaida is only that other people shouldn't hear. Shouldn't disturb other people, but you could hear. Your ears could hear the tefillah. The brother of the Maral in Saifa Chaim writes, what's the reason of tefillah balachash, davening quiet? When a person davens quiet, it shows that he has a minna that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kurov l'chol koirov. Hashem is close to every Yid. He's speaking to the Melech. To a Melech you speak quietly. When you daven Shemoneh Esrei, you're not far from the Melech. You're close by. So therefore, what's the point of davening loud? The Shemesh Miel talks about this inyan, Barichas, and he says, it's in Pashas Chayei Surah, when a person davens tchilis, bakushes, tfilis, it doesn't have to be quiet. It's okay when you daven loud. Don't we see Sefer Tehillim was written by David HaMelech, most of it, in a Kli Zemer, full with tefillos and bakushes. It's only Shemoneh Esrei that we need to daven quiet. What's the reason for that? So he explains. The Shemoneh Esrei, the Goydel Malusa, how special the Shemoneh Esrei is, how great Shemoneh Esrei is. It was nisaken through the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. They were mesaded the Shemoneh Esrei, and the Tefillah Shemoneh Esrei that was nisyasa through them, boikas v'oile ad ginzayim roimen. It goes up to Shamayim. Kidi bal hamakabulim. If not for the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah and the Uvis, they opened the Shah for every Yid. They should be able to daven Shemoneh Esrei. If not for them, we wouldn't be able to open our mouths to start davening Shemoneh Esrei. Don't we start in the beginning, Hashem Svusai Tiftach? It's a tefillah that Hashem should open our mouth. We shouldn't lose our thought, mind, and be able to speak to Hashem. In conclusion, the Shemesh Shmuel says there, "Bekaz va'ila kol kach lamalu." It needs a special shmira from the mekatrigim. They shouldn't be mekatrig the tefillis. Such special tefillis need a special shmira. So by davening quiet, the mekatrigim don't hear the tefillis. So it has a shmira that goes straight up to Shamayim. The Ben Ish Chai brings from a Talmud, from Gedoyle Talmid Arizal, Reb Shul Surik, he writes that you do need to hear it. The person himself should hear the words that come out of his mouth. And he brings a little maisa from his father. The emphasis, it depends. Every person has a different way of davening that you should have the proper kavanah. Some people have more kavanah if he davens louder that his ears could hear it, and other people not. Depends on every person. The Chadur brings that your ears shouldn't hear it, but if you can have proper kavanah, then go ahead, daven loud enough that you could hear it. So he brings, I heard from my father, Moiru Yovi, he used to daven quiet. And then he thought to change the minik, that he shouldn't even hear himself the tefillah. And he started doing it, so davening so quiet that he shouldn't hear it. A Yireh Shamayim told his father in a dream he should go back to the old minik that he should hear it. And he changed back to the old minik that he could hear the words that he davened Shemoneh Esrei. The next topic, going back to a discussion we had in the past, just to expand on it. Part of it we didn't go into yet, but let's go into it now. We see the koyach of tefillah, and tzaddikim had the koyach of tefillah, and each and every person has the koyach of tefillah. It says in the Malbim, a person who doesn't have a minis Hashem, even if he goes to a tzaddik, that the tzaddik should daven for him on his behalf, it won't help. The Malbim says on Pusik and Maluchim, Elisha Novi told Yehoidim ben Achav ben Yisroel, when he came to him, he begged him he should daven for him. So what did Elisha say? Elisha kaim melech Yisroel ma li v'loch. The Malbim learned Pshat. What does it mean, ma li v'loch? He meant to say, Tfilis HaNuvi will not help only those who believe in Hashem and His Nevi'im. And there's a kesher between the Nuvi and that person. And I could daven for you. But if you don't believe in the tefillah from the Nuvi and Hashem, the tefillah won't help. We have discussed that when a person davens one tefillah, b'kavuna, that could take up all the tefillahs that he didn't daven b'kavuna. Some Soifer says, and the Menam Shif is a perish from Menam Shif, Meseftas Chil in the back, of the Gemara. They both say the same thing, that a tefillah of a tzaddik, one tefillah of a tzaddik, has a koyach to bring up all the tefillahs of Klal Yisrael that didn't daven tefillah b'kavuna. And the reason why I'm going back to this discussion, I want to add the second half. But first I want to mention a maisa that I saw this Shabbos. This maisa, the Kloisenberger Rebbe mentioned 45 years ago at his Shir Chimish Rasha Thursday night. And he says like this: when I was young, I remember in Europe, even Goyim used to come to my father for bruchas. He used to come, they wrote their names, and they begged for certain things, whatever they needed. The tzaddik should daven for them. I remember Goyim used to come in, anything they needed. They were makabel the bruchas from my father. And we see this by many tzaddikim. That's how it was. So he brings an amazing story about this. There was a graf. A graf is a person who owned towns, woods, apuritz. And the graf, they had a child, only one and only child. He was 70 years old, and he took ill. He couldn't talk, and he couldn't walk. He couldn't move. They went to all the doctors, and no one could help them. Until one of his Yiddish workers told him, "You tried everything, I'm going to give you something that works." There's a tzaddik by the name of Mendel Menimeniv. His name was Mendel Torim, his last name. Go to him, seek for a brucha from that tzaddik. So he and his wife took along the child, and they went to the Mendel Menimeniv. And they come in to the Rebbe, and they're begging for Rachman on their child, that he should give a brucha, he should have a refuah, he should be able to walk, he should be able to talk. So the Mendele said, "Why are you coming to me?" This week's Pasha, Atachas Elekim Anoichi. Hashem, you have to daven to Hashem. Am I Hashem that I can give you a brucha and it's going to help? So the wife of the Graf answered, "We know that you're not Hashem. But we know that you're a Udam, you're a holy man, Udam Kudosh. When Kadoshim daven to Hashem, Hashem listens to their tefillos. Therefore, I beg from you that you should daven, that my son should have a refuah." So the Rebbe told the father, "I'm going to give you a brucha under the condition that you're never going to fire a Yid from all the buildings and hotels and taverns that you have." It was something that happened very often. That all of a sudden you can't pay the rent, just leave. You'll never fire a Yid from his position. He rented from you a place, never fire him. He said, "I am masking." Not only that, you shouldn't even hire the rent. The price should be the same. You shouldn't give them zerrechnen the rent. This is jetzt. And he promised them that he promised the Rebbe he's makabel. So the Rebbe turns around to the child, and he tells the child, "Can you promise when you get older that you will never do irishis to a Yid?" Couldn't talk, couldn't walk. And the child says, "Yes. I promise I'll never do bad to a Yid." He told the child, "Then walk to your mother." He got up and he walked to his mother, and he walked out healthy. This child got older. He became one of the officials in Poland, the Gedoyle HaSoifrim in Poland. when he was old, when he was 80 years old, and he needed to go to the kever of the Mendel Meniminiv. As he called it, Rabin Shturim. He had to go to his kever. And he went to the Tzion HaKudish of the Mendele, and he saw that the minig is people take notes and they write a kvittel, they write the name, sometimes they write the problem, and he says like this: I kept my promise, I never hurt a Yid, I never did any dishes to a Yid. And I hope that you find yourself in a place next to your forefathers Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And I came to ask you, to beg you, just like I kept my promise, so he needs something. What does he need? That he should go to beg the forefathers. There should be mo'ida rachmim on his children, Klal Yisrael, and also that the main tefillah, he begged that Poland shouldn't fall under the Russians. It seemed there was a war then between Poland and Russia. When the people heard and saw what's happening, they asked him, what happened? Like, what is all this? So he told him the whole story that happened. That his parents came to the Rebbe, was 72 years ago, when you couldn't talk, you couldn't walk, and he made this promise. And that was the derech of, you saw this very often, the tzaddikim, not only they gave bruches, avada for Klal Yisrael, they gave also bruches for Yid, for Goyim as well. That's the koyach of tzaddikim. But there's a ma'aser with the Kozun Tzamagid.
What the heck did they give a bruch for God? The interesting is, that was his condition.
First of all, good things come out when you're nice to the famous story of the Noida Behida with the matzahs. What's a Pesach, we'll talk another time. Right. Yeah. Not only that, it says in Chosh Mishpit, yes, and he did a lot of toivos for Yid. To take money from Goyim, usually you write a kvittel, and you also give the Rebbe a pidyon. That they did, because my father never took a pidyon from a Goy. If he came one day, he wanted to dafke give, and the father didn't take, so he brought a chicken, just didn't take it. Gave it away. Not the hand from a Goy. That's a dinner shulchan aruch, Chosh Mishpit, Simon Lamed Dalet.
I built to see from Elisha with the Mitzvah, the king, I forget his name, where Gehazi went to try to get money afterwards. You see, Elisha got involved, they got rid of the Torah.
Correct. In Shulchan Aruch, like klur, a person who takes money from a Goy, even pidyon shriyan, is pusalaydus. Because he has no bisha. Okay. So the Kozun Tzamagid, a person once came to the Kozun Tzamagid. He needed a yeshia, that he had a major robbery. And he came to the Rebbe should help him. So the Kozun Tzamagid said, what do you want from me? I didn't steal it. I promise you I didn't steal it. What can I do for you? That day, when the Geneva happened, I was in a different place. I wasn't even in the same town as where the Geneva happened. And he started begging. And he's giving Midbaya Shel Zuov for pidyon, for tzedukah. And the Rebbe says, no, I want more. He gave another 2 coins, golden coins. I want more. He added more and more, until the person said, you know what? The wife told the husband, told the Rebbe, that I'm going to go to the same Hashem that you go to. So the Kozun Tzamagid said, this is what I wanted to hear. You came to me, you relied only on me, I should daven. You could do the same thing. Now you'll have a yeshia. Now you helped. You'll find it. It says in Moreh Naim, in Masechta Shabbos, he says it, on Persian Shabbos. Ach tzurich lezeh minhag gemira. When it comes to tefillah, you need real minna. She'ya'amen minna shalayme sha'ashguches elekis sha'ainoid mavadeh. And Hashem is the only one who can help you. Koloid sha'ainoi zeh minna. If you don't have this minna, ainoi moyeloi tfelusoi v'loi tfilis achayim ulov. Your tefillis won't help, and other tefillis on you either won't help. Meaning going to tzaddikim, davening, but if you don't believe in it, then it's not going to happen. Every Yid has that koyach, a minna. The Yishunim brings from the Kohen to Magid. How do we know if a person has a minna in tefillah? So the person's davening Shemoneh Esrei. And he's saying, Atu chaynayin udam das, amalaman ishbinu, Rabbeinu shloim, I want to learn Torah, open my mind. Did you find the person should open a Gemara after Shemoneh Esrei, after davening? Maybe Hashem answered the tefillah. By Buruch Aleini, maybe he will go into business. Today, Buruch Aleini, I davened a Geshmaka Buruch Aleini panusa. He'll think, okay, today is a good day, I'll have more panusa. But let's try out the Atu chaynayin. Did you sit down and learn after davening? Let's see, maybe Hashem granted you a yeshia and you're helped, that Hashem will open your mind, you should be able to learn Torah. The Lechlevitch said, when a Yid davens to Hashem, he could be poil anything, whatever he needs with his davening. We see it doesn't happen. His minna is not clear. If his minna would be clear, avada, it would work. I'd like to conclude this inyan with an amazing pshat I saw from the Yoda Pian. We already mentioned this Chazal. The Gemara says in Shoshuna, Tanya hoyereb oime shnayim shuri lemita. Two people went to bed. They both were sick, and they both davened. And this person was saved, and that person was not saved. So Muri asked, why was he saved? He was not saved because he davened. They both davened. He davened that Tefilos Shleim. Rashi says Tefilos Shleim means b'kavuna. He didn't daven b'kavuna. Says a pure lepian. Person is lying in bed. He's sick. What do you mean his tefillah is not a tefillah b'kavuna? What kind of machshuvah does he have when he's lying in bed, Nebuch? Rather, his machshuvah is he wants to be helped. They both had the same machshuvah. The Bnei Shloim, we are not well. We both need yeshiyas. Rather, he needs a yeshia, and he davens and he needs a yeshia. So, what machshuvah did he have that he was? That's not called Tefilos Shleima. Teretz is he didn't have a minute trust in his own tefillah. The person became healthy, felt my tefillah means something to Hashem. Davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hashem Nesra, talking to HaKadosh Baruch, my tefillah will be answered. He had the minna in his tefillah. That's called Tefilos Shleima. The other person didn't have a minna in his tefillah that his tefillah could help. So, you don't have a minna in tefillah, as we see in all these mafarshim, then the tefillah is not a proper tefillah.
Even a person that has anivas, you can feel shuffle, when it comes to the tefillah, it's a different story.
It's not a lack of anivas. It's B'richa to Hashem, but this is what he's doing. He's davening to Hashem. Not shayich anivas and azazach. If you don't believe what you're doing, then you're just plain spielt mit Wörter, saying words. It means nothing.
Even if he doesn't daven for it, as well, no?
It could happen. We don't know the cheshbonos of Hashem, even without tefillah. There are people that don't daven at all, and they are mitzliach. There are cheshbonos. There are many cheshbonos. Could be that Hashem won't give him the schar in Ganayim. Won't have schar in Marabu.
You'll never really know if his tefillah was shloimo, because it could be that Hashem just gave it to you because he chose to give it to you prior.
Well, that is also true. But when a person davens because he needs something, and he davens at Tefilos Shleima, his tefillah will be answered, as we see. The first Shin, when the Torah says, "B'tchini b'zeh," we are sure that davening in the proper tefillah will be answered. Okay, we are on or about ready to start the Shemoneh Esrei, but there's an important thing that we have to mention. The very first pusik in Shemoneh Esrei is Hashem Susai Tiftoch Efi Yagid Tefilos. And it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Aleph. There's another pusik that we started in Shemoneh Esrei. Ki Shaime Shem Ekru Huvi Goydel Alekaini. But that pusik, we don't say not by Shachris and not by Marav, only by Mincha. Ki Shaime Shem Ekru Huvi Goydel Alekaini. But Hashem Susai Tiftoch, we do say every Shemoneh Esrei starts with that pusik. But really, the Shemoneh Esrei begins from Baruch Atu Hashem and the Kani L'Kai V'Saini, not from Hashem Susai Tiftoch. So the Gemara says in Bruchas, Tav Daled, Tav Tes, there's the Indian of Smiche Gile Litfila. As soon as you finish Gual Yisrael, you have to say immediately Shemoneh Esrei. Hashem Susai Tiftoch, immediately after that. Now, Hashem Susai Tiftoch itself is not a lack of Smicha Gil Tefillah, saying Gual Yisrael to Shemoneh Esrei, as we'll see later on. But first, let's talk about information about Smicha Gil Tefillah. The Gemara says in Bruchas, Amam of Reb Yochanan, Aizehi ben Olam Habu, Ze Hasoymach Gil Tefillah. Who is a ben Olam Habu? Who is the Smicha Gil Tefillah Shanarvis Marav? He says, Baruch Atu Hashem Gual Yisrael, and he starts Shemoneh Esrei. He's a ben Olam Habu. Rashi says, if this is true by Marav, Kolshkin Tefillah Shachris, because the main Ge'ilah Mitzrayim was in the morning. Gual Yisrael, the Ge'ilah, as we say by Ezras Yisrael, the Ge'ilah Mitzrayim, was in the morning. So Avada, Ge'ilah has to follow immediately the Shemoneh Esrei. It says by Chizkiyahu Yamelech, Zechoinu asher salachti lefanecho be'emes be'layv shulayim. I went in your ways, truthfully, be'emes, be'layv. And he says, V'atoiv be'aynechu sisi. Atoiv be'aynechu, which is good in your eyes. I followed, even that I did. So the Chazal say, what does it mean? What did he add? Hatoiv be'aynechu sisi. You see something very special here about Smicha Gil Litfila. This Toy Banechu Sisi is Smicha Gil Litfila. Means it's something out of the ordinary. When a person is Smicha Gil Litfila, how special it is. And there are several Chazals about this in Yom Smicha Gil Litfila, and later on Daf Tes. Hayed Rabbi Yosi gave Eides ben Eliukim Mishim Kile Kedisha de Yishalayim. Won't get hurt all day. Very snipes learn sharp what it means you won't get hurt all day. It means not push it, you won't fall down, you won't get hurt. It means that you won't do any avitis. Mitzvah geredes, mitzvah it's megine, matzvah, you won't do any avitis koloyim. That's what the Yaras Dvash says.
And it's very sure because everyone is entitled to it too.
That we'll discuss that next time. We're leading to that. Not only that, I have a strong kasha. My kasha is, the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin, Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chaylik v'olam habu. Every Yid has a chaylik v'olam habu. Now, we see that the Gemara says in Tanis Daf Chuv Bayis that when Beroike asked Eliyahu Novi, is there a person here in the Shuk that will have Olam Habu? Is a Ben Olam Habu? I'm sure the shuk wasn't a shuk where people shouldn't be. It's a shuk of Yiddish kinder. And he asked, can you tell me who's a Ben Oilam Abu here? I didn't see anybody. Oh, these two people. And Moses says, why these two people? He found two people, Ben Oilam Abu. That means a Ben Oilam Abu is a Madraige. That's Tam. Kol Yisroel Yeshem Chaylik Loilam Abu, every Yid. But a Ben Oilam Abu, you have to be qualified to be called a Ben Oilam Abu. Yet the Gemara says, if you say Magillah Letfilah, you are a Ben Oilam Abu. You won the lottery. Ben Oilam Abu. It's unbelievable. Such a high Madrega. You do it every day. So what does it mean? He's a Ben. So we are all Ben Oilam Abu. There's something more to it. So I'm leading to that, to go to answer that question. We'll see later. Another Ma'amah Chazal. Amazing Ma'amah Chazal. The Balua told Ille, when you go up to Eretz Yisrael, you'll meet my brother Reb Broine, the man with Kola Chabire, and he's standing in front of all of his friends. You should know he's a Udam Gudel. How do I know that he's a Udam Gudel? Because once he was Masmach Gila Letfila. He said, Gual Yisrael and Shemin Esrei. He was happy a whole day. It's what an accomplishment I did. I was Masmach Gila Letfila. It's not so simple, you see. Masmach Gila Letfila. He did it once. It was, Hante gelungen. I did it today. It was Masmach Gila Letfila. The Medrash says, the Medrash Rabbah in Parshas Devurim, on the Pusi, Kimi goy gudel ashaloi lekim kroivim I love. Which nation is so close to Hashem? It's Halucha Udam Yisrael. A person learns Kriya Shema. Ma'isha mita lahamten acha Kriya Shema v'achach yispal. Can I learn Kriya Shema and then daven? Can I do that? We learned in the Gemara Bruchas Membais. The Gemara says, Shula ish taki for his hand. There are three taikifs immediately. Taikif, lesmicha, shchita. As soon as you put your hands on the axe, shchita immediately. Shouldn't be any interruption in the middle. Also, taikif l'netili sedayim brucha. You wash your hands until it's sedayim, immediately make the brucha. No interruption. And then taikif lege'il letfila. The Gemara says in Bruchas Membais. Immediately it should be the Shemin Esrei. Mi she'oise kain, whoever does that, ma'im matan schore what's his cha, umerabe barevi, v'im kuru kriya shema im mispal miyad, ya miftach she'tevelusa nishmas. The tefillah will be answered. Again, it's just unbelievable. Countlessly, we see more and more Chazal just building up what this is, Smicha Gil Letfilah. So before we go into the Halucha, I'll mention one more thing. Tanya, maybe I should say it later, but I'll explain it. I'm going to discuss that we do find many things we say after Goal Yisrael Tishumen Esrei. We'll discuss this in a minute. But the Tanya in his Siddur, in the Lubavitcher Siddur, they leave out V'shom Livna Yisrael Es HaShabbos. It's quoted, but they're right, but the Tanya didn't say V'shomli. Tanya didn't say Kibi. The Guru also not. The Guru left out all the things in between Goal Yisrael and Shemin Esrei, with exceptions. What? Adaba Moshe, and Kivin. Oh, we'll discuss that. Except that. What do you say? That we'll also discuss why we say Kaddish. Yeah. All those things everybody says, and the question is why. I have another question. We only do it by Ma'ariv and not by Shachas. We'll talk about that. So, the Tanya left it out. So his Mechitten, the Kedushas Levi, they were Mechatonim, children of Shabbat. He sent him a message. Mechitten Leben, the Balatanya. I hear that you're not saying B'shomim Lo'etzor Es HaShabbos. So he told him, when you didn't say B'shomim Lo'etzor Es HaShabbos, Nasi Yerid B'shamayim. Yerid is a market. People come and sell items. It becomes a whole. There's a big Yerid in Shamayim. They say B'shomli. So the people sell items, and people come in the thousands and they buy. A shok, they buy. In Shemaim, there's a big yedid when they say b'shamni. So the Tanya sent back that there's a yedid when you're masbach gila the tefillah also, but I can't go to every yedid, so I go to that yedid. That's the Tanya answer. So now we have to answer all these questions that was asked. Let's start one by one. Hashkivaini. The Gemara says, that's the Gemara asks that kasha. Hashkivaini. We say Hashkivaini between Gua Yisrael and Shemoneh Esrei. So the Gemara says, Hashkivaini Ge'ila Arichte. It's part of the Ge'ila. I once heard, many years ago, that the Eden said Hashkivaini in Mitzrayim, when they came out from Mitzrayim. So Hashkivaini, B'chlal, the Ban Yoda explains it, what's so special about Hashkivaini. With his explanation, we see clearly that this is part of the Ge'ila. Hashem Suicide Tiftach. The Gemara says it's Chazal. You have to say Hashem Suicide Tiftach. Once the Chazal put it in, it becomes part of Shemoneh Esrei. And soon we'll speak about Hashem Suicide Tiftach, how special it is, why that was the chosen pusik to say before we start Shemoneh Esrei. We'll see Meitz Hashem. Now, before Vishamli, Toises asks, what's with Yirei Naini? Ruach Hashem Loilam Umay V'Umay. Why that? Not only that, Kaddish. So Toises says, and there's a few telitzim in Ruach Hashem Loilam, Toises and the Rosh. Because there was a time, Toises says first because we don't want people to be left in the field alone. They used to daven in the fields, so they added Baruch Hashem Loilam, so that person who came a little bit late, or he davened as long as Shemoneh Esrei, he won't be left alone. So therefore they added Baruch Hashem Loilam. Also Baruch Hashem Loilam has 18 times Hashem. There was a time when we didn't daven Shemoneh Esrei, so they said Baruch Hashem Loilam instead. I was excited that the Rosh brings this time. So therefore they said Kaddish right after Baruch Hashem Loilam. So that was the Shemoneh Esrei. And after Shemoneh Esrei, you finish davening, you say Kaddish. So that's good for Ashkenazim. Then we say Baruch Hashem Lo'ilam. But in Eretz Yisrael, nobody says Baruch Hashem Lo'ilam, and they still say Kaddish by Marav. So first of all, the Gemara doesn't bring Kaddish, Toises doesn't say about the Kaddish, the Rosh throws in the word Baruch Hashem Lo'ilam and Kaddish. And it's explained, the Rosh Shulchan explains in Siman Reish Lamed Vov, that Kaddish talks about Ge'ila. Kaddish is also Ge'ila. It's part of the Ge'ila. So he asks, so why do Sfadim say it? The Kaddish. They never said Baruch Hashem Lo'ilam. But since it was said, so we never stopped. It remained on. But Shachis, no one says Kaddish. Because we are Masagil. About we are Masagil at Tefillah, because we always daven Shemoneh Esrei. So over there we never said Kaddish by Shachris, and so we didn't start saying Kaddish, even though it's also part of the Ge'ila. Asfadim Shloi Nahagi bepsikem Eili, they didn't loy hoilem, they shouldn't have said Kaddish. But nai kedishusai shel Kaddish, nai shi ikke Ge'ila, it remained. Pele says the Rambam doesn't mention the Hiskera, only mentioned the two bruches, Kriya Shema. He mentions Viri Anaini and doesn't mention Kaddish. Okay. Now, Shabbos, Yom Tov, we all don't have the Torah here, but we all mention the Shamli, all these psikim. So the Pimagud and Madam Mephoshim say it's also part of the Ge'ila. Also, there's a Chivas HaRashba. By Madav, before Shemoneh Esrei, you announce Yada B'Yuvay. The same Talamuta. Daven Shemoneh Esrei again if you forget. So you're allowed to do it. By Shachris, you're also allowed, he says, L'choida. But I think our minig is to clap on the table. We don't do it. Not only that, when it comes Shmini Atzeres, why do we start Mashvriyach Mori de Geshem and Mori told by Mitzvah, not by Shachris? Because by Shachris you cannot announce it. You can't say the same Talamuta. Moida Tol Mashrich Moida Geshem. So therefore, we only start saying it by the Shemresa of Misif. Over there, you can announce it before the Shemresa. Okay, we'll stop here today. We continue next session. We'll continue this topic next week, next session.